Today, I'm going to show you how you can set up the perfect co-working system with your OpenClaw agent. So I've been running mine for about a week now, sort of 24/7. There's a lot of noise out there. I'm sure you've definitely seen all of it by now. And I just wanted to take my time building out a little bit, little by little with my OpenClaw to kind of just build on to the workflows that I was already doing with Claude Code and stuff like that. And it really is just insane what this thing can do. So I have it doing things like tracking my YouTube analytics, building dashboards. I have it building entire apps. I have it working with, alongside me with content, YouTube, newsletters, my Substack. It has various side projects, all doing it, right? And I have mine running on an isolated Mac Mini, and I'm controlling it sort of through that Mac Mini, but also through my own personal machine, which is the MacBook Pro that I'm on right now doing this video, right? So today I just want to show you how I set this up. I've come up with like the best way of doing it, and it's using OpenClaw and Obsidian. But before getting into that, just a quick note that this is not going to be about setting up OpenClaw. There's a million videos about that. So make sure to, watch those first. You should already kind of have an idea of how OpenClaw works if you're going to watch this. So if not, go watch those and then come back here. This is going to be all about the system built around it and how to co-work with it, okay? A couple things we're going to go through are the system files that actually make your agent useful and how to set those up. We're also going to look at how Obsidian is going to become your main co-working space, and then the two machine setup, which is what I use, my computer and my agent's computer, and then a little, a couple things I've learned on what I like to delegate to OpenClaw and do it myself. So I want to talk a little bit about that as well. So taking a look at this presentation I have here, which OpenClaw helped me build for this YouTube video, working together with it. This is the perfect OpenClaw setup, how I co-work with my AI agent 24/7. And just for you to know, mine is called Proxy. It's named itself that. So from here on out, if I refer to Proxy, that is my OpenClaw agent. So most people are installing OpenClaw and they're kind of stopping there. They're working with it, but they're not necessarily building systems around it. They're not really coming up with very smooth ways of co-working with it. It can be very clunky. It can be very confusing for people. You have a lot of different markdown files all over the place, a lot of different configured files. So this is going to help, especially for non-developers who want to work with OpenClaw and make it super useful. So the first things we have are our system files, so you should be familiar with OpenClaw by now. These are the main system files. I added one here, which we'll talk about in a minute, but these are the main system files that everybody has when they, kick up their OpenClaw agent. Starting with USER.md, I'm saying starting with that because I think it's the most important. It's the one that I've spent the most time on. And this USER.md file is everything about you and your business. This is what I put inside of it. Everything about me and my business, who I am, what I sell, my customers, content strategy, language to use and avoid. This is really the single source of truth for my business and brand. We got the agents.md file, which is like your main system instructions of how the agent operates, rules, safety, etc. We have its soul.md file, which is its personality. I've not really spent too much time on this. I don't really care about it at this point. That'll be something I deal with later. But, a lot of people are doing cool stuff with the soul.md file. The identity.md file, which is your agent's name, role, vibe. Like I said, mine is called Proxy. Then we have the tools.md file, which are all of your local tools and connections. And then we have memory.md, which is like your long-term memory that OpenClaw agent keeps tracking. Now, all of these are, injected into the system prompt when you start these new sessions. So like, this is really the basis of your entire agent. So you should really spend time working on these. And that's why my co-working system with Obsidian is going to make it so much easier to edit and iterate on these super important documents that really just change everything about your experience with OpenClaw, okay? So if you look here at this screenshot, which we're going to dive into the demo here in a few minutes, but this is what it looks like inside of Obsidian. So when you're normally working with OpenClaw, you just have these as folders. Like, for example, on my Mac, they're just as folders on my Mac, and you see these markdown folders. But I wanted to be able to see everything very cleanly and be able to edit it, and that's what Obsidian allows me to do. So you could see here, this is what it looks like. In Obsidian, I can read my MD files, I can edit them, type, etc., right? Now, just talking another minute or two about that user.md file, I just think it's super important. So I want everybody to just put as much effort into that user.md file as possible. Because if you are familiar with, the systems I've been building for the past year or two, a lot of what I've have been working on are context profiles. So I've always talked about context profiles, whether those be JSON context profiles or just Markdown. And these were like literally what they sound like, context profiles of every aspect of you and your business. And I would build like my Claude system prompts, my Claude.md file to always read these context profiles. All right. And when it comes to now this user.md file, it kind of replaces all that, right? Because we can just shove all of that context into the user.md file. So the old way that I was working was like separate context profiles folders. For example, like a business profile, an ICP or ideal client profile. And then I would kind of have to tell my AI whether, manually I would have to tell it to look at these context profiles or write it in the system instructions. And it's easy to forget, and it's also easy to lose track of all of that, right? Because you might have a context profile for your ideal client profile, you might have one for all your pricing products, your newsletters, whatever it is, that you needed context for, and you might not be maintaining those because you just have so many different files. At least this was my problem. But now I just put everything into the user.md. So now I have one user.md file at the workspace root. This auto loads every time. It has everything. It has my business, my ICP, everything merged together. The agent always knows my world, and I can edit it in Obsidian and always keep my eyes on it to make sure that me and my agent are completely on the same page when it comes to my business and brand, right? So this is what my user.md looks like inside of Obsidian. We can see about me, origin story, expertise, things I've talked about before. Now, before we dive into the demo, let's take a look at what my folder structure looks like, because I think this is super important too. Like, the agent is super powerful, but it's going to be pointless if you're not organized in the way that you're structuring your workspaces and your folders. So, one of the best skills you can have when it comes to working in OpenClaw and really any other AI is just like super good organizational skills. And that comes down to like organizing your folders and your files. So this is what mine looks like. All this stuff is going to be linked below. But you can see inside of my workspace, which is our main folder for OpenClaw to work inside of, we have my agents.md, all these MD files we talked about. I added a to-do.md, which is a shared task list. And then I have a subfolder just for my own work, Alex. Within there, we have dashboards. I have Substack, YouTube, email sequences, side projects I'm working on. I have assets. I have my configuration files, which is like my MCPs and stuff. I have the memory, and I have all of my agent skills as well, and I can open all of this up in Obsidian. If you have different clients, you might have it. If you have a, OpenClaw for personal plus work, you might, organize yours that way, but it's just super important to always put effort into organizing your files as best as possible. And really, lastly, what I'm doing is this 2 machines, 1 workspace approach. I have my machine here. You can see on the left, this is my machine. And what I like to do, for example, this is my MacBook Pro that I work on every day, right? And I like to keep, the work that I really want to have my hands directly on. I like to still do that. I like to use Claude Code, Claude Cowork to craft my own content, come up with my own ideas, do some creative work, spin up agents to work alongside me. And then my agents machine here on the right, the second machine, which is the Mac Mini for OpenClaw, is the agent's home base running 24/7. And I like it initially. What I wanted this to do was handle the overflow, the things that I never had time for, right? So that's really what the agent is taking care of. And that is all connected through Obsidian, where we can both work together in this co-working space, right? Now, this is changing, of course, over time. Like today, I had Proxy, my agent, doing this presentation, working on this YouTube video. So this is going to change, but I'm pretty confident that the 2-machine approach will never change. My agent is always going to be working on the things that I never had time for, doing all the extra stuff, right? It's just like an employee, right? If you hired an employee, you wouldn't just give it everything to do right away. You would give it the overflow tasks first. You would wait for it to get sort of used to your workflows, and little by little, you would be giving it more and more responsibility. I'm treating my AI agent OpenClaw the same way, all right? Now let's go into the actual demo part here. So if you look on my machine here, right now we're looking at my personal MacBook. On the left, I have Obsidian. On the right, I have my iMessage hooked up to Proxy. And then what I'm doing is here inside of this screen sharing, I have to log in here, but this is my actual Mac Mini, and I'm screen sharing into it, right? So this is how I'm working here. So I can have my MacBook here, and I can see everything. So I have my personal machine here, and easily like this, I can just hurry up and jump right into Proxy's workspace. And this is what's working perfect for me. I won't get into the whole argument about Mac Mini versus VPS. I prefer Mac Mini for various different reasons. One of the most being that I just like to have the entire environment right in front of me. I like to be able to see the desktop. I like to be able to, whenever I want, screen share into the Mac Mini and see what Proxy's doing, see what my agent's doing. I like iMessage. I like all of these things that I just think is easier. That's not to say you can't use a VPS. That's just not what I do, right? So I'm using the Mac Mini this way. Now, looking at the Mac Mini, this is the workspace for the agent, right? And when you're in your OpenClaw agent, in the bottom left here, you're going to see the folder, right? And this is the workspace folder that you should be familiar with by now. This is where, we talked about everything from your system.md files to your configurations to your agent skills to any other folders that you put in there. This is like the most important folder for you working with your OpenClaw agent. Above that, you could see the chat. And what I did was using Obsidian here on the right, downloading Obsidian, and you got to pay for what is Obsidian Sync, which is like, I think $5 to $10 a month. And what that allows you to do is open up an Obsidian vault and share it between devices. So that's what I'm doing. And I created a synced Obsidian vault within this workspace folder. So just this workspace folder I used for the Obsidian Vault. And what that allows you to do is now over here, you could see everything, right? We can look at all of our different files. We can look at everything we put in here. Our content, for example, I have my YouTube stuff, my transcripts. I could see the user files here. And this just makes all the difference, right? Because instead of working like this down here in the bottom left, where you could see all these raw markdown files, now we have this really good co-working space to work with that we could see everything, edit over time, actually edit these system files to make them better and better. So once you download Obsidian and set up Sync, which is super easy, there's plenty of documentation out there. It's super easy to follow. You're going to download Obsidian, hook up Sync, and open it in this workspace folder here. Once you do that, you can share it, all right? And what my setup looks like here is Proxy, my agent, has like a completely isolated workspace. I'm literally treating it as my own employee for my company. So Proxy has its own Google Workspace, its own email from my company. It has its own number, its own iMessage. It even has its own limited company credit card for subscriptions and stuff like that. And it has its own Obsidian account now. It has its own everything, right? So this basically is an Obsidian Vault under Proxy, and then I shared it to my own email. So what I'm going to do is bounce over to my personal machine, which now this is my MacBook, and I just had to accept this vault, and now I have it on my machine, and we both are working on the same files, all right? So now on my personal machine, I can do the same thing. I can see everything here. let me make this a little bit bigger here. I can see, the agent's files. I can see the user, everything that Proxy can see, I can also see. And then here on my iMessage, I can talk to it at the same time as we work together. Now, after you get your Obsidian, let me see if I can make this bigger here. After you get your Obsidian vaults set up and sync them between your own machine and your agent's machine, there are a couple really cool and important things you can do within Obsidian that is going to make the experience so much better. So let me go back to my presentation here. And the first thing we need to do with our Obsidian Vault is we need to make the non-markdown files visible. So when you're dealing with Obsidian and you have these files being shared in between your agent's machine and your machine, the default is for you to only be able to see files that are really in Markdown. So you cannot see TXT files, HTML, JSON. None of that is going to show up here in your Obsidian Vault. So we need to do something for that to happen, because a lot of what you're going to be doing with your agent is probably HTML dashboards, apps, TXT files for transcripts, JSON, stuff like that. And you want to be able to also see that on your personal machine. So what we're going to do is use two plugins from Obsidian. These are like open source community plugins that we could put inside of Obsidian that will allow us to do that. So to do that, you're just going to come over to your Obsidian, right? And you're going to come down here into the settings. All right. And once you're here in the settings, you're going to come to community plugins. If you're doing this for the first time, you're going to have to enable community plugins. And you're going to come here to community plugins and you're going to browse the plugins. And I'm going to drop below the 2 plugins you need, which is the data files editor and the Obsidian HTML plugin. And what these are going to do, the first one is going to allow you to view and edit JSON, TXT, and other non-markdown files. So that you can see things like your MCP configurations, your package files. And then the second one is going to allow you to render HTML files right in the vault, right? So you're going to enable those. And once you enable those, you can see the ones I have here. So I have these 2 plugins, the data files editor right here, right? And where did it go? And the HTML reader. And then these are enabled, right? Once I do that, that is now enabled on this machine. Now you would have to do the same thing on your OpenClaw agents Obsidian. So just go to your agents machine, and install those plugins in its Obsidian and do the same thing. You can ask OpenClaw for help. It'll do it itself, right? So once we have that, we will be able to do things like this. If you come here, if you look here at mine, under my Alex folder, I have YouTube, and now I have transcripts. These are all TXT files. You can see the TXT right next to it. So now I can read the TXT files inside of my Obsidian Vault. But that's not even the coolest part. The really cool thing is you can render HTML. So let me try to make this a little bigger here. So one of the things I had Proxy do over the last couple of days is make me a YouTube Analytics dashboard. So now I have this YouTube Analytics dashboard, and Proxy made it, dropped it into our dashboards folder, and now I can render it on my personal machine right here with Obsidian, which is so cool because, like, I was thinking these days, like, I don't need Airtable anymore. I don't need Notion anymore. I don't even need things like databases to track my analytics. I'm just going to have OpenClaw do my analytics, make me a dashboard, and constantly have it updated. I'm doing this by using a YouTube MCP, which is connected to my YouTube API, which is pulling all of my stats in here, all of my analytics, and I have this custom dashboard here that I can see. So this is like superpower user stuff. This is super cool. It's just incredible. I really have no words for how insane this is. And you can do that now with HTML, TXT files, everything. Now, there is also a second thing that we really need to do to make Obsidian work perfectly with our OpenClaw agent, and that is enabling it to sync unsupported file types. So back in our Obsidian settings here, and remember, everything you do in your Obsidian Vault, you have to do on both machines, both for you and your agent Obsidian, all right? Down here in the settings again, we're going to come to sync down here, and you're going to scroll down, and you need to toggle on for both machines this sync all other types, because if you don't do that, the HTML, the JSON, the TXT are never going to sync in between the machines. It's only going to sync these right here, which is like images, audio, videos, PDFs, but you need it to sync everything like HTML and JSON. So you're going to toggle this on for both machines, and that is really just going to set you up ready to go with the perfect co-working system with OpenClaw and OpenClaw and Obsidian. And then lastly, like down here, when you're working in Obsidian, you can see this little check mark down here. This means that everything is fully synced in between those 2 vaults, the one on your machine and the one on your agent's machine. Anytime this is a purple circle that is like spinning, that means it's still syncing. So you always want to make sure that when you're speaking to your OpenClaw agent about something in here, just make sure everything's synced up. If not, wait a minute or 2 for it to be synced, okay? Now this really just unlocks a lot of different things here, right? So for example, here you can have your MCP servers. You can see them on both machines. You can see, like, here's the YouTube one I had running. I could see it on both. So anything you really add on there. Now, just for you to kind of see how this might work, here's my proxy chat here, right? So let's say down here, I was like on my Substack, or let's say my YouTube. I could literally tell Proxy to... Let's see, I have my YouTube transcripts here. I have my Substack, and we have all of our agent skills. So we can also see all of our agent skills, right? So if I wanted like a thought leadership newsletter, I can see that skill here. It's just so nice to have all of this right in your hands, right? So I could tell it like, Proxy, take my latest YouTube transcript and turn it into a thought leadership newsletter. When you're done, put everything in the correct spot in the Obsidian vault. So I'm literally going to tell Proxy that, and it's going to pull my transcripts from here. It's going to use the skill. It's going to create everything, and then it's going to drop it back in the Obsidian vault, and I'm going to see it land in here, and I'm never going to have to really go into my agent's machine or deal with it. Everything is right here. So that's really how I'm working all day long. I'm kind of working here on my MacBook. I have Proxy pulled up in my iMessage to talk to it. I have Obsidian here to see our shared workspace. And, whenever I want to really see what it's doing or just work directly with it, I'll just hop right over here into the screen sharing, and boom, now I'm on my Mac Mini. Now I'm working with Proxy. I can work right in here with the chat and mess around, really hands-on, all right? This is the perfect co-working system, and I've gotten so much done over the past week or two with it. It's insane. Now, just to end on these notes here, this is going to take a while. I'm not even going to wait for it because Proxy's going to probably take 5 minutes to do it. But just to end here, I want to just talk about, over the past week or so, what I've really been like delegating to Proxy, my OpenClaw agent, and what I've been just keeping for myself. Of course, this is going to change over time, but my own self, I've been dealing with working hands-on with Claude Code and Claude Cowork for my YouTube videos, for coming up with the ideas, turning them into newsletters, the core content creation, but really just anything I enjoy doing. That's what's so great about it, right? Anything I actually enjoy doing, I'm doing myself on my own machine. And then the OpenClaw agent is handling things like analytics tracking and dashboards, which I've never had time for, right? I'm like the ultimate solopreneur. I've never spent a penny on outside help. I've never hired anybody. I've ran all these businesses myself. And because of that, admittedly, things have just really fallen behind. I've not been able to do everything I should have been doing, like tracking all sorts of analytics and stuff. Well, now, as you saw, Proxy's tracking my analytics and making dashboards for me, which is just crazy helpful. Social media, I've never had time to spend a lot of time on social media. I've never really had time to spend a lot of time on Twitter or X or LinkedIn. Proxy's helping me with that. Building full-blown apps and internal tools, as you saw. It's building my entire co-writer system, which is my exclusive community and membership platform. It's building that out. It's building these dashboards for me. I have side projects going on. It's organizing my workspaces. It's doing everything I always wanted to do and never had time for and never spent money doing. So, like I said, think of OpenClaw as an employee, not as a replacement. You don't hand your best work to a new hire on day one, right? You give them the overflow. Just this week, we built all sorts of stuff here. I connected to the data API for YouTube. I built custom dashboards, whatever. We already talked about this stuff. You can see here, all right? So that's really it. I would just say, starting once you have your OpenClaw agent up and running, really just focus on your user.md. Spend a ton of time on that and never forget about it. Maybe audit this every week or two. Always be adding to it. Your business products, ICP, content strategy. This is the highest return on investment thing you can do because you're just you and your OpenClaw are going to be on the same page, one-on-one, working together to achieve these goals. Then set up Obsidian, install it on both machines, enable sync, install the plugins, enable all the file types, and then start organizing your workspace. Create your folder structure, your work assets, all as clean as possible. Always work on that. And then start small. Don't start with your most important work. Start with stuff you've been putting off or never had time to do that you can let it run. That's not super important or going to mess with your current workflows. Don't just throw everything out right now and tell OpenClaw to do everything. And then lastly, just iterate, right? Update your system files as you learn what works. The system gets better every week. It learns as it goes, and it's just incredible, right? So check that out. I'm going to include everything below. Comment if you've been working on this, grab these resources, and there's going to be way more OpenClaw content coming in the future.